Warning: the following video contains spoilers and opinions. You have been warned. Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Zed, and welcome to this video. I am in quarantine, just like most of the world, and while I'm sitting here doing nothing, isolated in my room, I decided to watch some war movies, and I watched a good handful of them. Now, the criteria that I picked these is I wanted these movies to be fairly historically accurate. 3 out of the 4 of these movies are set in World War II, so that means movies like Pearl Harbor or Inglourious Bastards, though fun movies, cannot be a part of this war movie marathon. But without any further ado, let's get started with a movie that I've already reviewed, but I decided that I have some more clarifying thoughts and some information that was brought up to me that kind of puts a newer perspective on Dunkirk, which Christopher Nolan movie. Christopher Nolan is known for making these big epics, great filmmaker, but with Dunkirk, I have one very big problem with it, and that is my attachment to the characters. I didn't feel attached to any of the characters, and I don't think it's because of a lack of character development, because there are characters throughout that are developed fairly well, notably Tom Hardy's character, who, if you haven't seen the movie, his story, when it comes to an end, spoiler alert, he becomes a prisoner of war, and when he lands that plane and he knows that he has done his job, but he's going to become a prisoner, it's a very dark moment in the movie. And then the other part the other part that I actually really liked, the other characters that I felt were fairly well developed, were the civilians that were on the boat, notably the 2 teenagers and the older father. Now, there's a scene that in retrospect I see in a whole new light after talking to one of my buddies, Duke. He said during the scene where the civilian boat is rescuing the soldiers from, I believe it's either a submarine that has sank or another boat, but basically there's a ton of oil in the water, bombs are being dropped, the water's catching on fire, people are burning, people are dying, drowning, whatever, and the civilian boat is helping these people, and the captain is telling them to go below deck. And below deck, one of the teens who was previously injured, sustained a really heavy head injury earlier in the movie, is being held, and the other younger boy says, like, hey, watch out for him, like, be careful with him. And I believe it's Harry Styles' character who leans down and is like, mate, he's dead. And to me, it was already a very heartfelt moment, a very devastating moment, as you kind of, like, this is one of the only set of characters that I really felt attached to. But one of my buddies described it as the other boy who survived is now experiencing a casualty of war. Something these other soldiers experience every single day, but this boy is now experiencing it firsthand with one of his friends. And it put a whole new perspective on the scene for me. But overall, it's a really good movie. It takes place on the land, in the sea, in the air. Great firefights, great explosions. One of the things I mentioned in my last review of this, which is, I believe, in my last week I watched number 4, I said that I liked how specific they were with the score in this movie. Like, it wasn't overbearing, and I felt like they meticulously added the score in certain places and let the war, the noises of war, kind of be the score of the movie. In actuality, in hindsight, I remember this fact, but also while talking to my buddy Duke, he said the score plays throughout the entire movie. I believe until they get on the train, maybe, but the score plays throughout the entire movie. And I'm just deaf, and I couldn't hear it. And sometimes I just thought, like, it was so low, and it was at a tone I couldn't hear, I guess. I don't know. But the score is great. When I could hear the score, I really enjoyed the score. It's a really good score. I don't even know who did the score for this movie. I'm assuming it's one of Christopher Nolan's longtime collaborators. But yeah, Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer did it. So Hans Zimmer. It's Hans Zimmer. He does great scores. But overall, my perspective on certain scenes were changed when it comes to the sinking of the submarine, when it comes to the interactions with the PTSD veteran on the civilian ship, and the interactions between some of the other soldiers were really well done. But overall, I feel like the rest of the movies I'm going to talk about have really great character development, and I was way more attached to those characters. So I gave Dunkirk 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I would watch it again. It might be a while, but I definitely enjoyed it. Next up, I watched 1917, which the gimmick of this movie is the entire thing is shot to look like one take. More specifically, 2 takes. The movie does take a cut somewhat in the middle of the movie for a very good reason, and it makes sense for the story. I really enjoyed this one. For some folks, the gimmick of being one shot is a little too... They see it as a cop-out. They see it as this is nothing more than... this movie is really nothing special apart from its publicity. I disagree. It's a very classic story. 2 young soldiers need to get a message across a great distance to prevent further casualties from happening. That's the basic synopsis. And these 2 young men go through hell and back trying to get there. Trying to get to the other outpost where I believe it's the British, the Americans, Canadians. I don't exactly know who the Allied forces are. I don't remember. But they are about to walk into a trap. And these boys need to get there in like a night. They need to get there in like one day. And they meet a lot of great characters along the way, including very notable actors. And I really enjoyed it. When you first watch this movie, when this movie first starts playing, you find yourself, at least I did, I found myself trying to find the hidden cuts. And whether it's the movie going into a dark area or panning behind somebody's back or into a wall or, whatever it might be, I was trying to find where the filmmakers hid the cuts. And quickly, that kind of became obsolete. The camera is kind of like the third character on the journey, and that character is you. And you get the perspective of all the characters and what they're viewing, what they're experiencing, and the noises and sounds and almost the smells. Like, the attention to detail in 1917 is amazing. When you're traveling through all these muddy ruins and what's the word? I actually used it in my review. I'm gonna look that up real quick. But when they're walking through all the here we go. We're gonna find out what this word is. I am going to read as fast as I can. Apparently, it's not in here. Why is it not in here? The Badlands. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. When the characters are walking through the Badlands and you see bodies caked in mud over top of each other, bodies that are laying face down in puddles of water, bodies that have limbs ripped off of them. I mean, it's unsettling. To see all these sights and all the rats eating the dead bodies and the decay. You could almost smell it. That's what I'm trying to say. It's very horrific. But I really enjoyed this movie. I got really attached to the two main characters. And when something happens to one of the main characters, it really throws you and the movie through a loop. It really drastically changes the scope of things for the characters. But overall, I really enjoyed 1917. It's one of my favorites. It's probably my second favorite that I watched out of all four of these movies. It's a good one. And again, the gimmick might be difficult to just let be at the beginning, but fairly quickly you'll completely just go along with the single takes. It won't feel strange. And then next up we have Saving Private Ryan. This is a movie I've never seen before. I love Steven Spielberg, one of my favorite, if not my favorite director. Directed my favorite movie, Jurassic Park. This is a fantastic war film, and look at this cool edition I have of it. You can see the actual disc is still in the player, but this is supposed to look like, I'm guessing, a personal box. It has like medals in it, bullets, pictures of the letter that's read out at the beginning of the movie, basically announcing to the Allied forces that they're going to storm the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. So this is an incredible little edition I have here. I think it's the 60th anniversary commemorative edition of this movie. Whoops. So this movie is fantastic. I think it's no surprise and it's no secret that the first 20 minutes of this movie is probably the most detailed and realistic depiction of war on film, which is the depiction of D-Day. The storming the beaches of Normandy, the casualties that occurred were absolutely devastating. And Steven Spielberg did a great job at not putting this obnoxiously loud score over top of it. He let the sounds of war be the score to terrify you just as much as the characters on screen. He never took liberties in making these characters seem like these buff macho warriors. People are throwing up, people are crying, screaming for their mother, for help. The death and the casualties, the absolute obliteration, just mowing down soldiers while they're trying to storm the beaches. It's crazy. It's incredible attention to detail, and it's horrifying. That's like the word for a lot of these war movies, horrifying, because you don't realize the casualties of war until you really see it. And it's hard to see it firsthand. There are movies and documentaries that do show you firsthand the casualties of war. And I think this movie, from those documentaries and videos I've watched, this one is a great depiction. And you see all these war veterans talk about this movie and how it gave them PTSD afterwards. That this movie really captured the experience that the 18 hours, the experience that these soldiers went through during those 18 hours on D-Day. The one thing I'll say about the opening scene is it doesn't capture the full scope of time that D-Day, the time that it took for the capturing of the beach to happen. It kind of felt like an hour maybe on film, but in reality it took 18 hours to capture the beach of Normandy, the shores of Normandy. But a couple little details. At the very beginning, the opening shot, you see all of these soldiers on the boats coming to shore, and you see them throwing up, right? And you might think that they're nervous. It's the nerves getting to them. And though that could be the case for some of them, the real historical fact is that right before they loaded up and sailed off, they filled up all of the soldiers with a really heavy meal. And what was actually happening were the soldiers were seasick, and they were throwing up the huge, hefty meal they had. I'm sure some of them had nerves, but in reality, a majority of them were throwing up from seasickness. Also, soldiers that were falling out of the boat and drowning because each soldier carried 90 pounds of weight on their back, and they sunk like anchors when they fell in the water. A couple little inaccuracies, very much Hollywood dramatization, is the bullets coming through the water and killing the soldiers. That wouldn't happen. Basic gravity, that wouldn't happen. You know, you can't. You can, especially at the depths that these soldiers were. There is no way bullets were flying through them, passing through them, and killing them. But again, a little bit of Hollywood dramatization. Another really great scene is also during the storming, when the two American soldiers are walking up to two soldiers that are surrendering, and they have their hands up and they're speaking a foreign language. And what the audience assumes is that these are German soldiers. And one of the laws of war, the best way I can describe it, is that if an enemy surrenders, you have to take them as a prisoner of war. But you can see in this movie, Steven Spielberg showed pretty profoundly that both sides, there's never a right side. There's never a side that is better than the other. Both sides can be horrific. And while these guys are pleading for their life, the two Americans shoot them down and kill them. And that just shows that that war is not just. War is never fair. There's never a right or wrong side. Both sides can be wrong and are wrong for something. But another fact about that is Steven Spielberg doesn't put subtitles on it. He doesn't tell you what they're saying or nothing. But if you do a little bit of research, you will discover that those two soldiers that were surrendering were actually Czech, and the Czech Republic was invaded by Germany, and a lot of soldiers, or a lot of men, were forced into the army to fight for Germany against their will. And basically what those soldiers are saying are like, we're not German, we're Czech, we're not German, please don't shoot us, we're not German, we are Czech, we are, you know, they're basically pleading with them. But these two Americans don't understand any of the foreign languages, and they just shoot them down. Another thing that if you could speak Czech or knew that fact, it puts a totally new twist on the actual scene. But again, it's still just as impactful not knowing it, because you can see that both sides of war are ugly. That movie is really great. The final scene, Tom Hanks sitting there, dying, shooting the tank with his pistol, trying to make a last-ditch effort, knowing that he has nothing, there's nothing he can do. It's an incredible piece of filmmaking. Steven Spielberg knocks it out of the park. The first 20 minutes of this movie are worth the 3-hour runtime. And honestly, the 3-hour runtime feels like 3 minutes. It goes by like that because it's so compelling. So, moving on. I did a lot of research about that movie afterwards, so I could go on and on and on about Saving Private Ryan, but I will shut my trap. And then last but not least, I watched, Saving Private Ryan, I gave 5 stars. I think that's an obvious. And I think also 1918 I gave 5 stars, but I didn't say that. And then last but not least, I watched Fury. I am a big Shia LaBeouf fan, and I know you are too, Pickford. And I think he is an extraordinary actor. He is in one of my favorite movies of the last year, The Peanut Butter Falcon. He is just, there's something about him that I just love watching him on screen. I've watched him since I was a little kid, all the way back on Even Stevens, and I think he's an extraordinary actor. This movie also stars Brad Pitt, who, Brad Pitt loves doing war films. You have Inglourious Bastards, you have Fury, you have World War Z. He loves doing war films. Brad Pitt loves killing him some Nazis. This movie, though not fully historically accurate, it's not a depiction of a certain time or a certain battle or whatever, but it does show the perspective of tank operators during World War II. And this movie is kind of like a culmination of several different stories and accounts from tank operators and such like that. But it's very compelling. It's a very good story. I do really enjoy it. The two scenes of note, obviously the last like 20 minutes of the movie, but back it up a little bit. When the soldiers take over the city and kill all the Germans that are, I guess, like, they have a bunch of children they're trying to train, and they liberate these children from becoming children of war. But when the two, Brad Pitt, and I can't remember the kid's name right now. What is that kid? What's the actor's name? I know his character is called Machine. That's his war name. But the actor's name, Logan Lerman. I know him from, I believe it's in the Percy Jackson series. And he's also from The Perks of Being a Wallflower. But War Daddy and Machine are upstairs with the two young women. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what's being said. You don't know the tone of you can only feel the tone, and the tone is like, is War Daddy going to rape these women, or kill these women, or interrogate these women, or capture these women? Like, what is he going to do to these women? And a relationship forms between the younger woman and Logan. I can't remember his last name again. Logan Lerman's character, Machine. A bond is formed between them, and in like 15-20 minutes, you have a great love story that forms between these two young characters. And then you have the other three characters, Michael Pena, Shia LaBeouf, and John Bernthal, who play, I know it's Bible, Gordo, and John Bernthau's war name, I don't remember what his war name was. His name is Grady Travis, but I know he has a war name, but I can't remember it right now. But when those three come up and just are complete fucking assholes, like trying to force the women to have sex with them, they're completely drunk, just cursing, throwing stuff around, like licking eggs, and just being just animals, just complete animals. That scene is so tense, and you never know what's going to happen. Because I don't speak German, so when Brad Pitt is speaking German or whatever language they're speaking back and forth, I don't know what they're saying. So it's very tense for me, just being like, I don't know, but. And then, when, spoiler alert, the young lady dies after a bomb is dropped on I'm guessing their flat, their apartment, that's devastating, because you are so engrossed in this new blossoming relationship that these two young people have, and it's devastating to watch. And then the last 20 minutes of this movie are incredible. It's 5 American soldiers versus hundreds of German soldiers, and it's a fight for their lives. They have limited ammunition. They're completely outnumbered, and it's a very compelling 20 minutes. What I will say, this movie takes huge liberties with its use of tracers. And if you don't know what tracers are basically, it says in the movie, every 5th round is a tracer. And what they are these, I can't explain the technicality of them, but they basically produce a light source. So if you're fighting in the dark, or with fire, smoke, whatever, you can see the beams of light going out in front of you, so it's easier for other people to track where you're shooting at. But what it ends up looking like, a lot of these battles in this movie, is a Star Wars fight. There are so many red and green lasers going everywhere that it looks like one of the battles on the Death Star between the stormtroopers and Han Solo. And even it goes to like it's even more similar when you realize that the good guys have red lasers and the bad guys have green lasers, which are what happens in Star Wars. It's the exact same in Star Wars. It just they use so many of them that it's kind of distracting at points. Though I kind of got used to it by the end of the movie. At first I was like, what the shit? Why are they using fucking laser cannons to fight in World War II? That would be an incredible movie, a very futuristic weaponry in World War II. That would be definitely something that I could see being made, or probably is made. But when you're trying to be fairly historically accurate, the uses of tracers, yes, absolutely, but the abundance of them to the point where it looks like you're in a sci-fi movie, I don't buy it. And it looks like the internet also doesn't buy it. I did research about this afterwards, like Fury movie laser fights, and it's just like, yeah, they definitely take liberties with the use of tracers in that movie. But I feel like out of all of the movies, the characters in Fury, I like the most, I think. I got to know them way more than the rest of them. Like, I got to know Tom Hanks' character quite a bit, but the other, like Vin Diesel's character dies early on in Saving Private Ryan. I did like the medic, but overall, the one I liked, the group I liked the most was in Fury, and their final fight is it's devastating to watch, because you are so, at least I was so engrossed and had such a fondness for these characters by the end. But overall, I gave Fury 4 out of 5 stars, and mostly because the movie sometimes turns into a sci-fi film. But that is it. Those are the 4 war movies that I watched recently while in quarantine. If you've seen any of these movies, let me know which one is your favorite. If you have any other war movies I should watch, let me know. I have a good handful in my collection, you know, after mentioning these two. I also have Dunkirk, and I also have Saving Private Ryan. So if there's any more, I think I have Monuments Men too. Not Monuments Men 2, but I have the Monuments Men. But I believe that movie is critically panned for not being a good movie, but I do own it. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. And until next time, I'll see you later. Peace.